Welcome to Moss Marketing Mondays, a.k.a. the M3 Podcast.
Brought to you by Moss Marketing Group.
Bringing you everything marketing every Monday. Stay tuned for marketing tips and tricks you can use today. The M3 Podcast, marketing knowledge to help you succeed. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the M3 Podcast. This week, Dre, Ricky, and our guest, JE, owner and founder of AMPR Plaza.
Thank you for having me, fellas.
Thank you for being here. What is AMPR Plaza?
Autos, Marine, Power Sports, and RVs. It's an acronym. I have had this company for 7 years. It started out as a finance company for autos, marine, power sports, and RVs. It didn't become what it is now until just this year. Well, end of last year. We rebranded. I started a consignment dealership, RV consignment dealership, about 3.5 years ago. And it was just Kansas City RVs, or KC RVs is how it was known. And then we kind of branched out into some power sports. It was kind of one of those natural moves because golf carts were big in the RV communities. And so, and now it's continuing to grow here in Kansas City. Lee Summit just allowed and passed the law to have golf carts out on their street. So
really,
yeah.
I guess we need to move to Lee Summit now.
New information.
Yeah, what is it? Raintree Lake. Raintree Lake, of course, is a nice area over there. And this past month, I think we sold 3 golf carts to people in Raintree Lake in Lee Summit. But we got involved in boats as well. So I had been financing all of those, but then this past year we thought it better to rebrand as AMPR Plaza because AMPR was going to be the acronym for all of the things that we wanted to carry, which in fact now we do. We were located in Grain Valley. We knew we were going to need more space, so we started looking.
Your new space is sick. Looks great.
It's a lot, that's for sure. It's more than double what we had in Grain Valley. But it was a good step for us so we could have all of the toys that we wanted to have to sell. And then the plaza part of that was just something that, I liked from years ago, especially in Kansas City. Kansas City was big on the plaza, the Country Club Plaza. Back in the day, Cecil and Larry Van Tile, they opened up their stores. They started calling them plazas as well. And yeah, I respect the hell out of both of those guys coming up in the car business. But I just liked it. So AMPR Plaza, and it was a big space anyway, so it just made sense.
It's perfect.
Yeah, that's how we branded. That's how I met you guys.
So if people listening or watching don't know, JE is someone that we do work with now on all kinds of stuff. It started off as like a marketing account, and JE actually has his own podcast that we run.
Thanks, Ricky.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Key Ricky.
Ricky runs.
Ricky runs. It's in my garage. And
studio.
Yeah, most
studio.
people watch it and they're like, "Where's this at?"
It looks like a cool bar that you'd be able to go to.
Indeed.
There's been people that have been like pretty mad because they don't know what bar it's at.
I saw one comment where somebody typed in there like, "I can't find the Moss Garage Bar," or whatever you had called it, and they were like actually trying to find it.
Yeah.
But so we've worked with you on a lot of fronts, on a lot of the progression of everything is just keeps growing, and I know it's going to keep growing on all kinds of fronts. We've sat on the couch talking here for an hour before this even started of all the fronts of other things that are progressing and going to happen. But I want to rewind of you have all this success of what you've built. I feel like you have this, the AMPR Plaza is turning into this kind of empire that has all this stuff under it that people live their whole lives to go open up an RV dealership, or their whole lives to go open up a boat dealer, or go sell golf carts, or do this. And you're like, I'm actually going to do all of it. What you briefly touched on the car business and things like that, but what's that full JE story coming from the start?
Well, the reason we carry everything in new and used is because I can finance it. So my background is in finance. I started financing cars in the early 90s, 94, 95. And I've been in every box you could possibly imagine. High-profile dealers, BMW, Mercedes dealer in Florida, to a used lot that the box I could barely get my chair in with somebody else's chair in. It was just that small. I learned a lot about the car business. I had a place at the lake. I learned a lot about the boat business. So I was financing boats. And power sports I loved. So, of course, that naturally became something that I liked. And I was fortunate because I knew people in the business. And when I moved back from Springfield to Kansas City, Barry Brunner, who was the owner at JE Plaza, he was, 32 years in that business, and wanting some help on the finance side. And I really hadn't had a whole lot of experience in the power sport and or motorcycle business, but that was kind of my last piece, from where I'd been. At the lake, we'd also done some RVs, so I'd already had a little taste of some of the RVs, and I liked it. I wasn't real crazy about the motorcycles and the power sports because, the price point on them, as a finance guy, you're only getting paid on the back end. So, you're
like, hey, you know what? I like financing this $100,000 motorhome a lot more than this $9,000 bike.
Indeed. But it was so refreshing. I mean, the car business is a grind, as you guys well know. You're putting in a lot of hours. You're trying to meet quotas and goals, and at the last day of the month they wipe that all off the board, and you're broke and starting all over again.
I don't think anyone understands a business that I do think at larger scale it's done differently when you get into the corporate side of dealerships, when there's tons of them that they watch quarter over quarter. But what we experience in the car space, and I feel like a lot of people also have experienced the same thing, is it is 30-day cycles. Mm-hmm. Like, you're only as good as your last 30-day cycle. You could put up the best month that dealership has ever seen since they've been open, but if that next month you fall on your face the first 2 weeks, they really don't care what happened the month before.
That's right. They'll give you a plaque that month, and then they'll fire you the next.
Exactly.
That's
and
exactly right.
It's such a turnover space. I mean, we watch it across tons of dealerships everywhere that I don't know any business that really operates in 30-day cycles kind of like the car space.
None.
And it's
do rec?
No, well, that was my point. Is so, and the customer in that atmosphere in the car business, it, as we refer to it, a car is a need, anything recreational is a want, and that in lies the difference in that customer and the reaction that they get to give to you, and that part was so refreshing. And my point coming back up here and getting in, I think I helped him out. He actually sold out to Gail from Gail's Harley Davidson, bought his store, I think back in 2016. But there for 5-6 months, it was so cool because, I mean, he was in 3rd and 4th generation, right? So you got guys that their kids were now coming in to buy from him. And, how cool was that? Because, it's a refreshing sale to begin with, right? They're excited about it. They're really pumped up. And, and we had some, high price points on some of that stuff, because we were selling some big Honda side-by-sides that were, pretty pricey. But just that whole vibe, I just loved that. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to, book that deal. So the year before I started my AMPR F&I services, I think what it was called. I registered it with the state of Missouri, and I had one account.
Off to the races you went.
And that guy wasn't doing all right. But it did get me another account, and that account in fact, that's what got me back to Kansas City was that account that I was working at down in Ozark, Missouri, which was a guy that I knew, John Youngblood, and so he ventured off into kind of what I'm doing now. Of course, he's a car dealer, but he got into
He has all kinds of dealerships down there, I feel like now.
RVs, power sports, and boats, yes.
I feel like that probably, coming from the auto space, I feel like that probably is a very refreshing area of dealing with people that are coming to buy once.
Yep.
And I also feel like it probably pulls a different clientele also, majority of the time.
It does. It does. In fact, these are people that, aren't necessarily, budgeted out every month, right? They have a little extra, and so that does create a different customer and a different atmosphere for me as a finance manager or finance guy. That was just a breath of fresh air. So I decided that at that point, I wanted to take this, and at the lake, I was doing finance for a big chaparral dealer. And then I got on with a used boat dealer and an RV dealer. And I decided that, because everybody down at the lake, if you guys, go to the Lake of the Ozarks, most of those independents all started out in the consignment business. Those boats, people wanted somebody else to sell them. And, as did the Premier 54, which was the chaparral dealership I did finance for, I don't know, 7-8 months, one season. And, but it was big because everybody down there was accustomed to the whole consignment program. So I was, okay, well, I can do something. And that's how I ended up back here. My daughter had my first grandbaby, and I can do this shit anywhere on the planet, so might as well do it here. And that led me to getting a gig. I was doing finance for 2 RV dealerships in Kansas City. And at the same time, I went ahead and found a little lot down in Grandview. And that's kind of my story of going from the finance side into the consignment. From that point, we just started growing. All of a sudden people wanted, and I think the difference was because here in town, there were already 2 guys that were doing consignment RVs. One of them, the guys I knew that I was doing his finance for, and actually there were 3 guys that were doing consignment at the time. But the big difference were 2 of them, they didn't have any finance options. Well, when I started mine, I called some of my bankers and I asked them, here's my plan. And they're like, oh, God, But fortunately, they went ahead and signed me up, and I was sending paper to them and getting deals bought. And that grew that business. And that was, thankfully, because of my finance, it grew my consignment business. That's kind of where we're at today.
So I picked up like 2 things when you were talking. The first thing, I got to remember the second thing too when I'm bringing this up. Dre's over here with his phone ringing and stuff, like can't even.
It's muted. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Botch that one.
Fuck, Dre.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it when you were talking about doing finance at the lake. So I'm thinking someone selling boats. I'm just immediately thinking someone financing boats down the ocean that they can be ran year round. Does the financing and the sales of boats just like drop off the map in the winter months at the Ozarks? Like, That's where I was when you were saying like 7-8 months, and then I'm like, I never even really registered to me thinking about like, okay, I'm going to run a dealership at the Ozarks and sell boats, and then all of a sudden it gets cold out, and then you're just, what do they do? Just close up shop, see you next year?
Well, there'll be somebody in there, but yeah, for the most part, if you didn't squirrel away your money when money was good, then you're going to have a bad winter.
So
Yeah.
you work for 7 months, find a different job for 5, and then come back sell for 7.
If you're a salesman, yeah. But if you're good, you're staying into it, or you're going to most of them are required in January. The boat shows will start January and February.
Okay.
So all of the guys at Lake of the Ozarks, which is the Lake of the Ozarks Marine Dealer Association, of course, they're big ones here in Overland Park and in St. Charles, but they'll do others, as well. They've got to, if they're going to stay on for that new season, they're going to be doing the boat shows for that dealership.
Okay.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I
I'm sitting
never
here
even
doing
really
everything
thought
in my
about
head.
that, and then you were like saying that, I was like, holy shit! I'm like, I definitely don't want to be selling boats. Like,
Don't want to be a bad boat salesman.
car sales like dip a little bit, and people were like, oh, like how bad it was December and January. I'm like, it slows a little bit. Like, we didn't see as much. We counteracted it with marketing, and you could spend more money and avoid that dip. But it's like, I don't think you could outspend to fix the boat problem. Like,
Boats is it. There's unless you are in, a climate that will allow year-end sales and but here in the Midwest, it's a brick off the table, man. It just falls completely down. RVs, it certainly slows up, but RVs more commonly are sold to older, retiring, or folks that have the ability to get away in the
they're
winter.
trying to get out of Dodge when it's cold.
That's
They're
right.
like, I'm going to buy the motorhome and I'm going to get out of here.
Yep.
Before it gets too cold.
In fact, that we last 2 years, our September and Octobers were pretty damn good on the fifth wheel buyers.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that stays the same this year. I really do. But yeah, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to everything. I think really, I wanted to come back around to you guys, hooking up with you guys. I mean, there's in business, period. I don't care what you do. If you're got a lemonade stand or you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it doesn't matter. I mean, you got to market yourselves. You got to promote what you do, hopefully in the best light that you can. And, there's all kinds of new mousetraps that come open every year for marketing. When I got to meet Dre, who cold called me, by the way.
Hey, good job there, bud.
It works.
So it does work. You've got a belief in yourself, and you see something you think would benefit, and I believe that's what you did. But number one is the energy that you guys put out. It's a good energy. I think people want to be a part of that. The other side was I fucking hate doing the stuff that you do, right?
Hey, to be completely honest, I fucking hate social media just as much as the next person.
And I know as a business owner that you've got to advertise, you got to market, you got to promote. And this is such a huge thing right now. I mean, I've in whatever it's been, 4 or 5 months or so, we have definitely seen, and I'm not talking about, putting stuff up on Marketplace. We've done that, and I hate that, by the way. But it's obvious to us that this is where, the world is going, and then where the marketing world is in our country is it's tied into the stuff that we're doing right here at this moment, right? It's where we can sell from, an ad that gets put out that attracts somebody. So this year, my plan was, as we decided to brand AMPR Plaza, I invited you guys to sit in on some marketing meetings that I do, which is kind of rare. In fact, a lot of the people that will attend these meetings have never been to a meeting with other marketing agencies, or certainly I've had. And you guys were a part of, I've had 2 TV stations in on the same meeting. But it was important to me that I wanted to brand AMPR Plaza in a way that I knew things that moving forward, the marketing strategies I would have to have were going to be things that I didn't know, or different things. But my plan was to seek that out. So you hit me up at the perfect time. There's no question. But the other part of that was my plan was to, instead of just run ads, right? There's a ton of RV dealers that are running a lot more and spending a lot more money than I am on TV. You'll see them constantly. They're doing a lot of things that are positive, I'm sure, for their dealership. I hope that they're getting an ROI that is good for them. But I didn't want that. I wanted to be a little different in how we approached. So, as you guys have been a big part of, I decided to market through sponsorship and promotions. And so far, I'd knock on that table, but I'm too lazy to bend over. So it was rough getting started, right? So we did a lot of shows in the late winter, early spring, as does most of your dealers. But we did some different types shows. We didn't do the RV shows. We did an off-road show, which was unique in itself, right? It was.
To be fair, that was a sweet show, and I think we stole the show with the videography too. There, to be fair,
I'm pretty sure you guys got a job there, didn't you?
Possibly.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens next year.
I would push that. I'd push Chris on that deal. But so we had a different idea on promotion, and I thought it went well. We ended up selling a couple of those, both the snipers out of that deal, and we got a Black Series sold.
I mean, if you would have pushed Ricky a little harder, I think you could have sold him one of the snipers.
Those are pretty sweet.
They are legit.
Well, and to come to find out, that's it. Because Bill backed off of those. So
really,
yeah.
You
would
had
have
look at the opportunity you had that you missed.
You could have had a collector's
However,
item.
let me just say that Bill is got a design guy that has just put together a plan.
Ooh.
And I think they found a builder in Texas that are going to build this. So don't worry.
All right.
Oh, you might
You may
still
get
hope.
you may
There's
get
still hope.
bigger and better. But yeah, so that show, we promoted it. We did all we could with you guys. We did all of our TV commercials. We were, in that mode for a month prior to that event. We pushed that event. So we marketed ourselves through that event. That paid off immediately. Right after the show, we sold the 2 snipers. Within a few weeks, we had a guy that was on the hook there. He finally came in. He bought the HQ, HQ 15. No, it was the 17, HQ 17, which was the bunkhouse. But that was a lead from that. And then, the rest of the season. So as you guys, I made available my calendar and my plan, right? So you could see how colorful May, June, and July got to be, because we were in all kinds of stuff. I mean, with the TV station, we were doing events with them instead of just, and of course I still have commercials on there, but in addition to that, we had sponsorships. So they were taking us all over the city, literally all over the city. And we were taking our dog and pony show with a new RV of some kind and setting up like we're going camping, right? And we'd go wherever they told us to be, and we would market it. We would promote there. We would have you guys, whatever new units that we had out that we were pushing hard. We did the Music Fest. The Music Fest was hugely successful for us because we had 4 shows that we sponsored, and we got to set up our campers. They did a great job of getting people to these music fests. And we got to showcase, we, of course, were taking the big Sandpiper, right? Big 43-foot fifth wheel, and it was like a little home, a little luxury home.
I think that's bigger than a few apartments around the city.
It is. It certainly is. It was bigger than mine. But actually, it was a lead from one of the guys that was helping to run the show there in Leawood, and that lead turned into a Sandpiper sale. And that sandpiper sale was a beneficial sale for us both on the front and the back, and that paid for that show. We finished that June and July with the music festivals, and, then we kept pushing. So as you guys well know, I'm a big fan of local music here in Kansas City. I have been pretty much my whole adult life. I like all music. I attend a lot of concerts, but I do like local music. And so we devised this plan, right, as you guys were made privy to, and we stuck to it. I mean, it's one thing to create the plan, right? It's a whole different thing to try to stick to it.
Execution is, I was reading something today that was on like motivation and
Implementation.
No, it was on motivation is one thing, but discipline is actually, like, motivation isn't real. Discipline is real. And it's like actually making all those things happen. And that is one thing with a lot of the business owners that we work with. The people that have discipline and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, and it happens, and it just takes place, are the ones that you see all the success come from. The people that you, like, sit down with and they talk about all these things and they never do any of it, and then they want to point fingers at everyone else all the time. They're like, well, this, that, whatever, it's the market's not great, or this isn't right, or this isn't right. And we see it in the real estate space right now where people are like pointing their fingers like, well, the market's slowed down. I'm like, but the top 5% of agents are busier than they've ever been. I'm like, same thing in the car space. And with all that stuff, like, you had a plan. And anytime you come to myself, Dre, or anything, and you're like, hey, JE's got a plan, I'm like, all right, strap up, we're going for it. Like, it's not like it's something that, I know you're not bullshitting us to waste our time. And
if it's on the calendar, we're doing it.
That's like,
we have been held accountable by that calendar all summer.
When you come to us and you're like, hey, I want to do a podcast, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And there was a lot to figure out on how to make it happen. And, I mean, we're still working on it. I mean,
Yeah, but we killed that deal, didn't we?
But it's like one of those things that there's always more to do. And, I mean, we're what, 20?
This is 24.
This is the 24th M3 podcast. And there's still so much more that, I mean, we're learning from it all the time. We were talking today in the truck that so many people that listen to podcasts, if they click on a podcast and there's not like 200 episodes, they're like, well, this isn't a legitimate podcast, so I'm not listening to it.
Oh, they just started.
Yeah, but it's like, and we've been doing this for a while now, I feel like, and it's something that we still haven't even, like, started touching that surface.
Yeah.
But we have people reaching out to us, starting to, like, reach out to us all the time from listening to the podcast, like, hey, listen to your podcast. Like, it's just one of those things that it's, like, happening. And we're starting to see that traction once it, like, starts. But it's also something that when we started, I didn't know how many episodes it would take, and it's 24 of them in. It's been a lot of fucking work to just start seeing traction.
Yeah.
But when you see those guys get traction, it's like, it's that line that goes like this, and then when it hits, it's like straight up.
Well, I mean, and I think they're, I told both you guys, you and Ricky, when I first thought up this thing, I fucking hate podcasts, right? I didn't want to do a podcast.
Welcome to the M3 podcast.
When we were talking about this, I'm like, let's call it anything but that, right? And I told both of you that. But I saw what you guys were doing. And as you, from the first one and to obviously being part of this one, but we've got a few of the band ones done, which, like you said, every one of them, I've learned a great deal, but it is such a good vibe to be in that, as the studio that we have created over there in your garage. Is everybody walks away from that. In fact, I was up in Gladstone on Saturday night. I went to see a band I hadn't seen, and I wanted to try to book this band somewhere, and so went up. Terry Hancock was the drummer. He'd been trying to get me to see this band. Anyway, so I'm up there, and it was Penny Lawrence band. Oh, my God. this gal is fantastic. And I did book her. So we've got her in Overland Park.
Got it.
Got it. Yeah. So, so Terry comes over at break and we're, bullshitting and we get to talking, and the comment that he made, he goes, man, that deal we had over there, that podcast, that was a lot of fucking fun, man. I've not had that. And he goes, I didn't know what to expect. And that's what we've heard from everybody that came there, right? Is we didn't know what to expect, but everybody walked away. And of course, I'm going to have to give it up to you guys, but more importantly, Madison, because when we end up these podcasts.
Madison's getting the plug on the podcast.
So I told Dane, I said, listen, she doesn't have to make food for all these guys. That's not part of the deal. And so
what did I say back to that? Said you keep her working all the time.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that shit. So
Smart.
Yeah. But anyway, my point back on the whole podcasting or the live music was that as a small business, right, you're going to find ways, and you're doing these B2B podcasts that somebody can take something from. There may be a nugget in this thing that people can pull from. But in what we do, including you guys have to promote your business. If you're promoting your business and you find something that you can find a groove, right? And it just happened to be Wendy, who is my rep with Fox 4, love her to death. She, is a Facebook friend of mine. So she always sees me out at these bands. That's how this developed. So why don't I put the twist on, let's go to the bands playing at wherever they're playing instead of bringing them in the studio.
And that's when JE first came to me with that. I'm on the phone with JE, and of course I'm always the one that's like going and like talking with everyone. I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea, like blah blah blah. And I'm like telling Dre, Ricky, and they're like, not a good idea, bud. I'm like,
the audio is not going to work.
I'm like, no, it's going to be a great idea. I'm like, this would be fucking awesome. And they're like, there's zero way for that to work. I'm like, not the answer I was looking for. I'm like, I was hoping you guys would tell me.
Dane was hype. We're like, okay, let's realistically look it through.
Yeah. So
unless we had control of the whole deal, right, and filled it with people and just said, everybody,
shut the fuck up.
That's right.
And
Freeze.
we're recording.
And that, right, now that would work. But
when we hold up the sign, say clap, that's when you clap and cheer.
we didn't have that kind of pull.
I was really looking at Ricky. I'm like, no, we're gonna figure this out. And he's like, it's not gonna work. Period. I'm like,
no,
I'm really not liking the vibes you're bringing here.
But we ended up having I think anyway, she brought me this idea, and okay, and we were dealing with the fallout too of COVID. So there was certain restrictions at the studio and different things like that. So I said, okay, well, bands are playing. They're back in the bars. Why don't we go? And so she says, well, I'll have to run it up the ladder and see. And so she called me back. And she says, yeah, we can get a crew, which became Brad. And then, of course, I took Brad away and brought him under my tutelage so I could own these fucking films. But we needed a spokesperson. We needed a photographer. We needed, our own little crew to go to these bars. And I think it was in December. It was a good turnout. The people were there. The band brought their friend base. That after we got done with that episode, it would air that following week on Fox 4's Great Day KC, 3.5 minutes. It was a short segment, but then we got the clip from the station, and that clip got posted on all kinds of people's Facebook pages and Twitter and Instagram, and all of a sudden, the band that was being featured in that gig and AMPR Plaza, because we keep saying it over and over, and it's just flashing every time that we do anything. It's always in the background. It's always on the screen. And we're always talking about it. So what happened was that the views that episode got, it kept it on the website, on Fox 4's website for 5 weeks, and which was, at the time unheard of. But for us, or to think that we were going to have that kind of, so needless to say, they liked what we were doing. They said, okay, continue. So in January, I booked. We got two segments each month. So every other Friday on Fox 4's Great Day KC, we'll air whatever band that we had seen the weekend before, and just like that. I mean, I'm sometime in mid to late February, right? I had booked out the entire year of bands in different venues. And we've had a couple of changes. Something fell out or something happened, but it went that quick. The station was very happy. They continue to play them. Every now and again, I get a little extra. In fact, the band I just mentioned that I went and saw, I had to get that plugged in. So I called Wendy up, and I'd already had 2 deals booked in September. And I said, I love this band. Is there any way that she said, yeah, we'll get it done. So they're comfortable with this. But I guess my point with all of that is back to what I was saying originally was my plan was instead of just putting ads on TV or running ads on Google or running ads on Facebook and doing things that everybody else is doing. And used to be like in the car business, back in the 80s and 90s, there was no internet, it was who could buy the biggest ad to put in the newspaper that come out on Saturdays, right? It was because
we didn't get experience that time, but
yeah, you guys.
I'll take your word for it.
So it was crazy. I mean, it was a bigger section than the actual Saturday news in the Kansas City Star. I'm not kidding. You would come and you'd be on the lot and you'd have these guys that would show up in their hands was this deal that you put in the paper, right? But that was, everybody did the same thing.
And the sad thing is there's still people out there trying to sell that.
Yeah.
And like when we worked at the dealership, saying this in the nicest way possible, there was a lady that came in, she was much older and stuff, still trying to sell newspaper and sell these like magazine sections. And I always talked to her and everything like that. She's like, most dealers won't even talk to me. She goes, you're at least nice to me every time I come in here. I'm like, no problem. I'm like, I'm probably not signing up just to be honest, but I'll hear you out every time you come. And she'd be like looking at this like magazine and everything. She's like, and she's giving me her whole sales pitch, and I'm like, I know she's been working on it really hard. And she's like, well, it's going to go out to like 1,200 homes. I'm like, I want to say this in the nicest way possible, but I'm hitting like 850,000 people every month with what I'm doing on social. And her jaw's like, she's like, that's a lot. I'm like, I know. I'm like, where you're like looking at one zip code, I'm like, I go, everyone has this thing in their hand nowadays called a cell phone. I'm like, and I can get in front of any of them that I want, and you can pay to be in front of them. I go, since this podcast has started, Dre's phone always goes off, but your phone's going off. Like, everyone has their phone in their hand all the time. So what's the easiest way to get in front of someone? With their phone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in the nicest way possible, I was like, I told her, I'm like, I'm probably not going to do the magazine thing when I can spend that same money.
Yeah.
Go reach 500,000 people.
Well, I mean, there's not that much difference in that kind of advertising than donating to, your kids or your neighbor's kids down the street that's got some kind of weird paper. Well, it's not about that, right? It's about being a part of that community.
Which on those things, we always donated to those things.
Absolutely.
Those things, like the kids came up selling, like any kid that came up to our dealership selling the little, I don't even know what they call it.
Well, it was the football card.
Yeah, the football card.
Oh, yeah.
The first kid of the year that would show up at the dealership, we'd buy every single one of them he had.
He usually won for the team.
But
selling the most.
Did we ever use one of them? Not one. Customers would come in buying a car and be, you know what? Here you go, have this. Like, we just gave them away.
We'll see you Friday night.
Yeah, we literally just gave them away. It wasn't It was just the principle of the first kid that had the confidence to I'm gonna go hit the dealership in town. I'm gonna go hit the dealership, see if they'll buy something.
Even at that, right? Even at that kind of donation, if you will. Everything is marketing. If people are sitting around talking about you, it's marketing. If it's beneficial, it's even a better marketing. If they're talking shit on you, it's still
marketing.
It's still. I mean,
your name's
good
in their
press,
mind.
bad press, whatever. Yeah. But so anyway, back to working. My angle this year was trying to get to do different. You know, that's why I signed up with you guys. That's why we do different things. I mean, if we're in the garage with bands and we're promoting, all I'm trying to do is my promotions, instead of doing what everybody else is doing, is I'm trying to connect the dots, right? And I'm going to tell this story and then I got to get out of here. But I'm at an event that we were doing. I guess this would have been, we were at BB's Lawnside Barbecue.
Was this last week?
No, it was when Stranded in the City was there.
Okay.
So it's been a while. So
You totally know what that is, don't you, Dre?
He actually had a deal there last week. I don't know if you check his calendar, Dane.
yeah,
He did
Bless
drop
you,
his.
by the way.
Thank you. He did drop his calendar in our calendar, so
Yeah, don't worry, I
So-
follow it.
he's much busier than we are.
But the reason I brought that up was I am sitting there and I've catching some the guys behind us talking, and I think, in fact, I was outside. I was outside talking with somebody else at the time, and Andre with the band, he gave us a good plug, right? You know, thanks JE, thanks AMPR Plaza, and thanks Fox 4, which a lot of bands will do. So I come back in, I'm sitting there, and I'm listening to these guys behind us, and I'm hearing this guy tell the guy across the table from him who and what AMPR was, right? Because the guy, you know, who the fuck is AMPR? What is that, you know? And
I'm just eating barbecue.
I didn't know who these people were.
Sir, you want an RV? You want a boat?
So it just dawned on me, but that guy was telling him who we were and what we did. I don't know the guy. I wanted to go over and thank him, but, you know, I think he left. But that was my point, was we connected that dot, right? Even though I'm out there, it was hotter than hell that day. It was just a brutal day, but we were doing what we liked to do. We were marketing ourselves in a different way, but at the end of the day, that guy was talking about AMPR Plaza.
Which this was something that, you know how I told you earlier I had two things? I totally spaced the first one.
So you remember.
Yeah, so now I remember. You have had that success in business with doing all that marketing. I feel like so many people get into business and they're like, you know, I'm going to do everything, but I'm not spending money on marketing. And then nobody
Those
knows.
are foolish people.
We see it all the time. They're like, you know, they'll spend money on the most random shit you've ever seen. But the marketing is where they draw the line. They're like, you know, I'm not going to spend the money on that. And people ask us all the time.
Why? Because they can do it themselves, or
We get that part sometimes. The answers we get are just astronomical. But people ask us day over day how we have seen the success we have seen in the marketing space. And I tell people all the time, for business owners, 99% of business owners, if you go ask them to name a marketing company, almost no one can. No one has branded themselves to be a marketing company. These companies go out and they come to you and say, hey, you know what, we're gonna market you, we're gonna brand you, we're gonna do all this stuff. And you're like, well, you have 105 followers on Facebook and you have 40 on Instagram. Yeah, it seems like you've done a killer fucking job. Yeah, I want you. Come on. But it's like,
she's cute.
but exactly. They
That's
come
normally
out
what
and
it
it's
is.
like,
Yeah.
I think if you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk.
Yeah, indeed.
And like we have brought in this whole new space that we have a lot of people wanting to come work for us because they're like, you guys brand yourselves. Like people know MMG. Like that's what they're starting to know.
Dudes that don't smile.
That's the brand. See, I told you it works. Everyone knows it. So that is like a branding thing. Then in the beginning, everyone's like, my girlfriend's the worst. She's like, you guys need to smile, And I'm like, no, it's turned into a brand thing that everyone all the time. When we post a photo, I'll get
You got to do them all in black and white, just like they did in the 80s.
Pretty much.
1880s.
Do that, haze it up a little bit so it looks like it's taken on a really old camera.
But that like marketing aspect of it, the easiest money I spend all the time is marketing. If you come to me with any idea, any person in this space comes to me and says, hey, I think we could make more money if we did this and we marketed this.
Yeah. You know why that is, right? Because you like the win.
Yeah. Like
When you market and you promote and you do the things that you think is going to get out there. Some of them don't work, by the way. Some of them are completely fail and cost you a ton of money.
Have you ever seen a football team that goes out and has won every game they've ever played?
Never.
No,
Not
it's
one
not.
time.
It's not a thing. Like,
but when you win, when you've got something that you did and you created it, and it does bring in a sale or it brings in that customer or client or whatever, right? You won.
exactly,
Yeah.
and that's what. If you can win 75% of the time,
Yeah.
you're a Super Bowl contender. Like, that is the thing that changes things all the time. Like, you can be at the top of your game by being a winner and doing those things, but in business, if you don't have that marketing aspect, don't be a business owner. Hang it up, go do something else. Go work for someone. Go work for someone that is going to understand that you need to market.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, I knew right when we talked to you and you understood the spending and everything like that in the marketing space. And it's like, no, he's AMPR Plaza is this, and it's going to be, I mean, the sky's the limit for what he's going to make it because he's not scared of the marketing side.
Well, and I think, and not that I'm smarter than anybody else on this, I just kind of lucked into it, to be honest with you, but I had some luck last year in kind of spreading my marketing around to different people, doing some different things, and I kind of pulled from that. So as the end of the year came about and as we started this year, I found people that, I have to write the check at the end of the month, but if I'm writing that check to you guys or to the TV station or to Steel City Media or to some, any of these guys that I'm talking to on a regular basis, right, they're got to be on my team, right? It's not about the money. I'm going to pay you what you earned, but it's going to be more about how we're going to collaborate as a frickin' team to get to the point where we are, I hope now. I think with you guys, it's obvious because, we just talked about these bands that walk away from this new podcast that we're doing on these bands, and they're just like,
Wow.
Yeah, they are. They're wowed by it. And
you shoot for that wow factor. And
we have not even scratched the surface on this. By the time, and by the way, Covell's coming up tomorrow. I told him he'd have to come up.
I was going to say, I'm like, there's supposed to be someone else here tonight.
So he just got back from Texas, so I told him that he'd come up tomorrow by himself. And
when Covell gets here, we're going to all sit down and be like, hey, Covell, you're on the podcast. He's going to be like, what?
JE didn't tell you?
Yeah. JE said you were coming for a podcast.
It was on his calendar. I'm surprised you didn't look at it.
It's going to be an interesting conversation that you have with him. Covell has done really well, but he needs some direction, and I'm hoping that he can get that because he has done a lot of work on segmenting these, dissecting these, not just podcasts, but the videos that I own of these live events. And they're just sitting there, right? Which drives me fucking crazy, right? Because I know that they need to be out. And
that's we talked to someone this week. We had a new client come in, and they're like, "Well, I don't think we really want the whole marketing deal. And they're like, we just want all the content." So that is what makes us very unique as a marketing company. We're one of the only marketing companies around that holds all of our content in house. So we do all of our own content creation, but there's so many people that they look for one aspect of it. And I'm like, you know how to deploy it pretty well? And he goes, well, be honest, I only have 3 posts up on my Instagram. And then he's like, being honest with you guys, I don't know how to do any of that shit. I'm like, how about we figure that in and we don't bid out just doing content creation? But 9 out of 10 companies would have bid that out and been like, hey, we'll take your money. We'll give you a video. And then he puts it out. Never works. Guy doesn't know what to do with it.
And then he's unhappy because, it didn't work.
Not even so much unhappy. He might not be unhappy, but he's never using us again.
Well, that's
He's like
so
that video
unhappy
didn't work.
with the deal.
I have 13 followers and only got 4 views on that. That was a bad video.
Yeah, but
It's
and that's
And one of them was my mom.
She watched it twice.
Thanks, Mom.
but it's like one of those things that's just a portion of it that you have to figure out how to make all of it work. And but I'm going to sum this up with one final question. If you could go back, I asked, I'm pretty sure most everyone that's on the podcast, if you go back to your 20-year-old self, give one word of advice. I know I always wait for the biggest loaded question right here at the end. But if you go back to your 20-year-old self and give advice to do something differently, what would you go back and say?
Actually, I've been asked that question. I don't know if they said 20. I think they just said if you could go back and change or look and tell yourself. I don't know. I mean, I think I have tried so many things in my lifetime.
And it doesn't have to be business related. It can be very personal, whatever it is.
Yeah, but to me, everything ends up being business. That's always how I've been since I was a kid. I mean, really, I'm not just saying that, but it has always been that way. I owned my first bar in my 20s. I mean, because I liked the bar business and I wanted to be part of that. So
you could party all the time.
That's exactly right.
That's why our dad opened a bar in his 20s too.
So I worked my way up from, just a part-time bartender to a, full-time manager, and then got in part owner at a club. And then I thought, okay, I can do this shit, But to answer your question, I think when I have had my darkest times, right, or, didn't necessarily even have to be financial. It was just, as you guys all know, I'm an alcoholic, and I've been clean and sober for 23 years plus. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And that was a tough time for me, but the whole way through, I built up a bunch of relationships with people. So as you grow up, you have the guys that you go to school with, and I was close with them. And even early on in my business career, in the bar business, I was close with a lot of people. You find that though, when I got clean and sober, I couldn't be with those people anymore, right? And then I'd move around, or I'd go do this, I'd go do that, I'd be with this group of people. It'd be, the one thing I think that probably haunts me the most is how some of the best people that I knew in my life, right, through phases of my life, at that point in my life, no matter what, that I couldn't or didn't stay in contact with for whatever reasons. It drives me crazy, because there's guys that I absolutely either, loved, revered, looked up to, for whatever reasons, or even guys that I played football with, went to school with, went to college with, as you grow up and you go through these stages. Some of them were so important in my life and what I did, and the reasons I did things. And, that relationship was not as important, I guess, that it just drives me crazy that I don't stay in contact with those people.
Yeah. That hits home to everyone, regardless if you're a business owner, if you're just an individual, whatever it is. And I think that I'm guilty of it.
Well, I owe so much to so many people that, helped me along the way, or that gave me a thought pattern, right? Or, made me see life in a different way. And, you just, I don't know. That bothers me right now. I look back on those days and I think, God, man, I had a great time with those guys, or that guy or that gal or whoever it was, right? And they're still alive.
Yeah.
And they may be on my Facebook page even, but I don't fucking get to talk to them, and that bothers me. So
yeah,
that would be my regret. Or tell myself that, call these people, stay in contact with them.
Yeah. So always stay in contact with everyone. Always market. I mean, we can't even.
These are the takeaways.
Yeah. These are the takeaways.
Keep relationships, market.
This is the quiz.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything final that you have to say, Ricky, Dre? Any closing thoughts?
Ricky Dre just sounds like a cool name together.
That would be cool.
You guys are like Ricky Bobby, but
Should we combine our name?
Yeah, Ricky Dre.
We should make some headphones.
Oh,
Ricky Dre headphones.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's like
I like
Beats
it.
by Dre.
That'd be cool.
Oh,
Like if the
jeez.
marketing thing doesn't, if we have close up shop, we can do Ricky Dre.
Or if it does, because we house multiple podcasts, we could have Ricky Dre headphones
yeah.
sponsor the podcast.
The more you say it, the better it sounds.
It does. It's
It
getting
does.
better.
It's getting better the more it's being said.
Future episode.
Of the Ricky Dre.
with Ricky Dre.
Ricky Dre.
So I think that's going to close it up. Thank you very much for being
It's
on
been
the
a pleasure.
podcast.
I'm glad to see this. I'm glad to see you guys doing so well. Love this space. Love this energy. You guys just keep it up.
So everyone that's listening too, we're going to drop links below also to AMPR Plaza, to everything that's underneath AMPR Plaza. There's going to be a list. And then also the BS Sessions, which is JE's podcast that is going live weekly. And like he said, Covell's coming tomorrow. We'll have shorts rolling out. We'll have all kinds of stuff rolling out. Stay tuned. It's on the up and up. It's going to be huge.
It is.
So that is going to sum it up for the M3 podcast. I'm hoping someone's at the tables. So I'm going to key Lauren, Dalton, Logan, Cody, who's over there.
Thanks for listening to the M3 Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
Want to learn more?
Check us out on Instagram at Moss Marketing Group, on Facebook at Moss Marketing 58, or on our website at mossmarketinggroup.com.